In this video, I'm going to show you how you can make DeepSeek, the new open source AI model, fully private, so that you address all the privacy concerns that people are having about it, that it's sending data to China, that you don't own your data and stuff like that. I will show you how you can install it both on your local computer and have it interact with you using a browser interface like ChatGPT, like you have in this case, or how you can also install it on a server that you fully control using open source software so that you know 100% what's happening with your data, and then you could share it with other people, your friends, family, colleagues, and organization. And I will demonstrate how you can use the tool that I developed in Freenodus to visualize the conversations that you're having with DeepSeek and help you guide this conversation in a more interesting direction. Either generate new ideas by bridging the gaps like I have here and generating some interesting prompts that you could feed back to the model to then have it come up with more interesting responses. So that could be one way of doing that. Or another way is that you identify some topic that you are maybe not focusing on enough, kind of like at the periphery of the graph, and then focus on that topic and develop it further, or also cutting off the top layer of the most evident concepts to get to the ideas underneath. So I'm going to show you how that works. You can use it not only with DeepSeek, but also with other AI models, or on any text, actually, not only on AI conversations, but also on your own documents. So if you're interested, keep watching, and I will demonstrate how all of this works. And also please subscribe to this channel so that this video can get recommended to other people interested in the same content. So first of all, a little bit about myself. I'm Dimitri, I'm the developer of Freenodus. I also work a lot with different AI tools, and I spent many hours in the last week to understand what's the best way to install DeepSeek on a local computer. I think it's a great model because it has reasoning capabilities. It shows you how it thinks, which I really like. So it's always showing you like the thought process that led to the results, and that usually tends to produce better results. It's also a little bit slower than other open source models like Llama, so if you need fast stuff, then probably it's better if you use Llama, but the whole process that I'm showing you, you can actually apply it to any open source model. So what I like about this whole DeepSeek hype is that it made people more interested in running the models themselves, because suddenly you get something relatively good quality that you can run on your computer. I think it's amazing that it created this momentum. So let's dive right in on how to install it. So first of all, in order to run any local model, you need a tool that would enable you to do that. And one of those tools that's a very popular one is called Ollama. And Ollama has already many different open source models connected to it. It's open source, so you can go to the GitHub repo and see how many people started, how many people forked it. It's quite a lot of people. And when you look at the issues, you can also verify that everything is fine with this library. So it's pretty legit and very trustworthy. And all you need to do first to run it, whether you're doing it on your local computer or on the server, is to actually install Ollama. That's like the easiest way to do that. And here you have a download button. You can download it for Mac OS or Linux or Windows. In my case, I use Mac OS, so I'm going to download it for Mac OS 6. And what's going to happen is that it's going to download it, and then I will unpack it, run it, and then it's going to be available in my terminal. For those of you who are not software developers, terminal is something that you use to interact with the computer in the most old school, detailed way possible. It gives you a lot of functionality, and once you install Llama, it's just going to be available here from the command line. And you can actually already use the model directly from here. So if you go Ollama list, it will list the models it have. In the beginning, it will not have anything. And then to install a model, you will need to run something like Ollama run and then the name of the model that you want to install. You can get the list of the models here. So if you want DeepSeek, then you click on DeepSeek, you choose the model. I recommend to start with 7B because that's something that can run on the computer easily, or 8B. Anything below that is probably going to be low quality. Anything above that is going to put a lot of strain on your computer. It might not be able to run it, but if you have a powerful GPU card, you can go ahead and try bigger models, but start with 8B. And then here it gives you a command that you just copy and paste and then run it in your terminal after you install the Llama, and it's going to run this model. If this model is not yet on your computer, it will download it. Here you see the sizes of the models. So the small ones I'm running 5 GB, that's okay for any computer. A better one that's, for example, 7 TB is 42 GB, which is quite big. But basically you run the model. I'm not going to do it now because it tends to slow down the video, but basically you run it, and then you can just interact with it in the command prompt here directly from terminal, which is amazing actually. I like to use it sometimes when I have to run some code in terminal, and then I can interact with it. Remember, without any access to the internet, because now everything is on the local computer. So if you're traveling on the train, you can interact with this model, ask it some questions about your code base software directly from terminal. Or if you need to run some command in terminal, like for example checking the size of disk, which I always forget, like you can run it here and ask it to run it for you. So it's pretty amazing. This is already the first and the most important step. You have the model installed, it's available on your computer. But some people find it's a bit difficult to interact with it using a terminal. They need some kind of interface. And the people who developed almost like the most popular interface, and the best one in my opinion so far from the open source ones, is Open WebUI. So that's also open source software. It means you can go on their repo and verify the code. Actually, the only way to download it is from their repo on GitHub. You have the code here, issues, 60,000 people started, so it's pretty cool. Very often used. And then you have the installation instructions here, and you have two ways to install it. You can do it through the command line Python tools, because it's made on Python, so you can do that. What you can also do is to install it through Docker. I recommend to use Docker because it's much easier. Then you don't have to deal with all the dependencies, because if you install it like that, you might have to create an environment, install Python, install other tools. If you just have Docker, it's pretty straightforward. You download Docker, which is a package management environment, I would say, but basically you have containers there. So I will show you how it looks. You have containers, and you can run applications in virtual machines on your computer. That's pretty good, because if you like to experiment with AI stuff, you probably have a lot of those different apps that you want to install, but you don't want to install all the dependencies on your computer, and you want to keep them separate from the rest of the stuff. So this is what Docker is really good for. It allows you to have those apps running isolated from your main environment, and each app needs a specific environment that it recreates. So that means once it's stopped, you don't have to run it anymore. And once you follow those instructions from Open WebUI, you will have a Docker container that you can start. You actually have the commands that they recommend you to run here. So the one I use is this one, because they say if Llama is on your computer, which is the case with me, I just run this command. So I copy and paste this command, go to terminal. It's the same for Windows or for Mac, and just type this command here, and it's gonna launch this Docker instance, download it if it's needed, and launch it, and already show you which URL it's available at. You can also see it in Docker, by the way. If you click here, it's going to show you, and then you will have this instance running. If you open it the first time, you will need to log in as the admin. So once you do that, you will be able to run this application. Once you have it open, the first thing that you need to do is to check if you have any models already available here. If you see the model that you downloaded through Ollama, then it will show up here. But if you don't see it, then you can actually download a new model. So for example, I can say Llama 3.2 and some version of it or something, you know, and then I can just pull it from here, and it will pull it automatically and make it available on my computer. Here, as you can see, I already have DeepSeek R18B. That's the kind of model that works on my MacBook Pro that I also recommend you to start with. And then I can say, okay, how are you? And let's see, it's there. It's saying I'm there, I don't have any feelings, and so on. And this is running from my local machine. So if the internet was switched off now, it would still work, which is pretty amazing. And also all the software powering it is open source, which means all my data stays with me. One very important feature of this tool, Open WebUI, is that it's kind of like ChatGPT. You have workspaces, and you can say, all right, in this workspace, I want to upload some knowledge base. So for example, here, I can create a knowledge base that will contain some files on the topic that I'm interested in. And then when I'm interacting with the chat, I can actually make a reference to this collection. So that's going to be the context that this app is chatting with, which is pretty amazing because it allows me to upload documents in a secure way and to then interact with them kind of locally without having to think that this data is stored somewhere, or if it's some confidential documents, I know 100% they stay with me and nothing gets fed anywhere. Another advantage of using an interface like this is that you can use Infranodus on top of it. So for example, if you're having a long conversation with it, here I'm talking about acupuncture and I kind of want to refresh a little bit what we were talking about, I can open this Infranodus browser extension on that page and see the main topics inside. So what were the main concepts like acupuncture, Chinese medicine, and then how it's about balance and health. I can, for example, click on balance, health, and approach and see what this content is talking about, these particular topics, right? So that's pretty interesting because it allows me to kind of navigate in my conversation and find the most interesting ideas. But what I can also do is identify the gaps, so find some topics that are maybe not connected yet. And by the way, here, if this is open, it will also take chat history, so I can just close it and regenerate the graph, so I only see the content of the conversation. And then I see that, for example, there's a gap between holistic balance and nervous mechanism. And I can generate a prompt using AI for this topic here, and then send it back to the model, and then it's going to respond to me on that question. By the way, you see here, I'm using a slower model, 14B, and already on my MacBook Pro, it doesn't even want to start up. So the thinking process, as you see, is kind of slower. It still works, but it takes time. But now it's answering the question that was generated by Infranodus, so it's pretty cool because this approach allows you to find gaps in your conversations and then bridge them together. Another approach that I like is to find some peripheral topic like this one, which is at the edge of the graph. Here it's a natural painkiller, so it means it's something I talked about, but maybe it didn't develop well enough, and then I can click on that topic and generate a prompt based on this topic and kind of guide the conversation further in this direction, which is pretty cool. So you see you have these different ways of approaching and using the graph, either focusing on the gaps or finding topics that could be developed and developing them further. And another approach that I really like, the last one of the main ones, is that you cut off the top layer of ideas. So for example, here I cut off everything related to acupuncture and I'm seeing what is underneath. And here I can click to see all the nodes. And for example, here there's something about endorphins that I haven't seen before, right? And also nervous system. So then I can just select these parts of the conversation and then either get a summary, see in which context it was used, so what were the actual statements where I was talking about that with AI, or I can again generate a prompt and ask it to develop the conversation further in this direction. So this graph becomes like a navigation tool for the conversation, which I find is pretty useful, especially if you want to research a certain topic or if you come back to a conversation that you left a long time ago and you kind of want to get back into it. So that would be how you would use this whole thing on your local machine, either through terminal with Llama using UI interface. Another really good approach that I highly recommend is not to only use Open WebUI, but to also use VS Code. VS Code is kind of like a fancy text editor for software developers, but it's a pretty amazing tool because they already have very good AI functionalities implemented through different extensions that they have that people develop. And the cool thing about VS Code is that you can actually open your folder with your own documents. So for example, if you use something like Obsidian, they will be in text form. You open this folder in VS Code and you have access to all your data. And what happens here is that you can say like, okay, I have these ideas. It's my incoming ideas, something I'm thinking about at the moment. I can click on it. I also have Infranodus here that I can visualize as a graph all those ideas that I had. So for example, then I click on cultural power. I can use Infranodus to generate a prompt that will talk about this topic that I was thinking about, but I kind of didn't develop it. When I click on this, it copies it in the clipboard as it informs me here, and then I can use another extension called Continue. You can download it from the extension store on VS Code. And in Continue, you already have the model automatically identified. So I can choose here that I'm going to use DeepSeek R8B, and then I paste this prompt which was generated by Infranodus, and I tell Continue that I want to be using the incoming folder. So I say, all right, please use this incoming folder. I think this is the main one. Yeah. Use this folder and answer this question. And then it's going to use DeepSeek on my own data So everything is local, and then it generates a response for me. The only thing that is not local is Infranodus, because we don't have a local version yet, but we will generate it. But Infranodus doesn't have access to all your data. You just choose which parts of the data you give it access to generate this graph, and then the prompt is generated based on the graph. And then you can use this prompt to generate some interesting responses in relation to your content. And here the advantage in the continuing extension is that you can actually use different types of AI. So I have, for example, Llama here. I can also use Llama. I can use Claude 3.5. I will need my own API key for that and so on, but like if I want to use it on the internet. So that's also pretty cool. And I actually like using this way because if you install VS Code, you don't need to install it using Docker. You can just download it from the computer, on your computer from your browser, and then open it, install the extensions, and that's it. So that's like a really good way of using it as well. Now, in the second part of this video, I want to show you how to install it on a server. This actually took me a lot of time to research, so I found the best options for you that will save you many hours and a lot of money. And one thing that I want to say, like, why would you actually want to install it on a server? So when I have it here, for instance, on my local machine, right, I only have access to it. I can also make it available in my local network using the API address of my machine, but that's it. If I want to share it with other people, my friends or colleagues, or the company where I'm working in, and to have it running for the company as a private thing, I cannot run it on my local machine. So I need to put it on a server. The way to put it on a server is to also use all the same tools, open source tools, so I'm 100% sure what's happening with all this data that I upload to it, right? But I have to use some external server to host all this data. And then that's the question, like, where do you host it? Because you need a server to run the model itself, so through Ollama, for instance. That server needs to have GPU. So if you don't want to connect to any external instance of this model, which you can also do, by the way, you can even use the Chinese one if you don't mind, or you can use also multiple APIs, like there's one called Grok, I think, which offers external API to access DeepSeek. That's an American company, so if you're comfortable with that, that's fine. But if you want it to be running on your own server but available to the public, you have to generate your own server instance. And one way to do that is to use AWS or Google Cloud. So that's like a really kind of full-on hardcore way of setting up your server, because it will take you some time. You need to know how servers work. And the problem is that also it's going to be quite expensive, because you need a server with GPU to run inference on the model. And their GPUs are quite expensive. Like, you would be paying, I think, about €1,000 for having speed that is comparable to your local machine. And that's not even the best model. So that's quite expensive. I did some research on the topic, and I found a couple of companies I'm going to share with you. They're not paying me anything. It's just I like how they work. And one of them in particular I really like, because the moment that I found them, I had some problems installing their instance on my computer. And when I told that I had this problem to support, the founders directly reached out. So I think they really care about what they're doing. They're based in France, not paying me anything for this endorsement. I'm just doing it because I really like the product, and I recommend you to use it. Unfortunately, they don't have an affiliate link, so I'm not going to get anything for this recommendation, but just good feeling that I recommended something I like. So here they have like a really cool thing that I find is super useful. You can go into their deploy AI. Let's click on AI and see now, deploy now. So I think they have like a list of different AI tools that you can deploy directly on the server. And how do you do it? You can actually Google Koyab Ollama, and then you have this kind of one-click apps. So you have apps, and then you go into apps, and you can search for any AI-related stuff or LLM-related stuff. Let's see, Llama, and then you can actually deploy different models in their systems with just one click, which is pretty amazing. So for example, here you see you can deploy 70B model on the server. What you can do for the easy interface stuff is Open WebUI. They also have this tool. So you just click here This is the interface that we're using, already bundled with Ollama. So that means that you have Ollama, the model runner, with it. You just click on the button deploy. It opens the tab. You choose the server where you want to run it. The least powerful server is enough for this model that I showed you, 7B. You set everything up, and in a few seconds or maybe a couple of minutes, you will have it running on a specific web address, which you can then connect to your own domain. So that's pretty cool because it's going to be running directly without you having to do anything. But it's quite costly. It's going to be $375 per month on the cheapest server. The more powerful ones are more expensive. For example, something like this, A100, already going to be $1,500 a month. But the cool thing with their services is that once you have one running, you can actually stop it in settings. So you can say like, okay, I just want to stop it, and then you're not paying anything. So this is really cool. One-click deployment, and you have the model running. The problem, however, in this case is that the storage on those instances is not persistent. So if you're running this model, and let's say you want to kind of store all the settings that you have in your chat, and to kind of like be also maintaining the history of all the conversations and so on, all the users that you have, this is not going to work on this deployment. Each time it reloads or restarts, if there is a problem, which might happen, you will lose this. So in that case, you need a much more solid deployment, and that means you need to attach it to a database that will store all the settings. So this is one way of doing that. Another way of doing that is to attach a volume to it. And I have an article which I wrote on all these different ways of deploying it, also on the local ones and the server ones. I will leave a link in the description to the video that you can read and see how that works. But basically, the easiest way is to install it with one click, just to test it out. But if you need persistent storage, I actually have an instruction here, which is available with the GitHub link over there. So I write the best setup is to create a separate Postgres database. And here I have a repo on GitHub that explains how you can install it on Koyab, but with this persistent storage. And you have several ways of doing it. So one way is to launch your own Postgres instance, which you can also do here. So you can just say like, okay, I just want to launch like a Postgres service. Where is it? Here you go service, create service, and then you say that you want to use their database, and then you choose Postgres and so on. So you set up a database, and then you can use the description I have here for how to launch Ollama. So this UI chat that you saw here, I think it was there. So how to launch this, but with the Postgres parameters. So it's connected to a database. And then like that, you will have all the conversations and all the settings saved. But that still doesn't solve the problem if the model pulls itself from the repo. Each time it reloads, you will have to pull it again. So if you want to avoid that, I have some instructions on how to do that in that document. But basically, what you do is you can launch this instance using Koyab command line tool that will attach a default model to the instance. So then each time it reloads, it will pull that model. It's not so big, so it's going to take just maybe half a minute more. But basically, then you have the model always ready. So if you just want to use one model, this is a good way. And then you have the Postgres database for storing the settings for the interface. So that would be one way. And then you have a much more solid way where you attach a volume to your Ollama instance. But in that case, you will have to use a more expensive server, so something like A100, which is 1,500. But if you just want to kind of start and stop it sometimes when you work, that could be also something possible. And for an organization to have your own model for 1,500 euros, maybe just fine. And then, of course, you have another way of doing it, so that would be through Koyab. Another tool that I found that I tried is called Elestio. Elestio is kind of the same. You can also deploy new services pretty easily. You just choose from their combination. They have Llama, Open WebUI. Then you click on select, and then it proposes you where you should deploy it. So usually you want to choose something that has GPU, like this one. It's called TensorDog. And then you choose a region. Usually they have GPUs in Poland or in Finland, for instance. But now I think they ran out of them, so sometimes there's none left, so you have to check. But for example, here I have one, But as you can see, the prices are a little bit higher, although you might be lucky and sometimes get a really good server for not a very high price. So this really like a hit and miss here, but I like Elestio for this flexibility of selections, and then you have a service running the same way. But the problem here is that if you stop it, you don't stop the charging. So the only way to stop them charging you for the servers is to delete it, but then you have to go through the whole process of starting it up again. So it's kind of the same price and same simplicity as Koyab, but on Koyab you can actually stop the deployment on demand and then start it again. But here you cannot do that. So that's a bit of a problem. But both work pretty well. Elestio has some setting up difficulties, but they have really good support. They're also not offering me anything for this information. I'm just sharing what I spent hours on, so hopefully it's going to be useful to you. These are the two easiest ways to launch it. If you want to launch it on Amazon AWS and have your own server on that infrastructure that you fully control, I have a link to the instructions on how you can do that in that text that I created. In the very end, you have a link to AWS EC2 instance, and then it has a link to the instructions on how to actually do that. That was written by somebody who understands how this stuff works. But I have to warn you, you will not get the same quality of server for the same money. So $350 a month, both on Koyab or on Elestio, will get you a manageable server. That's kind of good for the Model 8B, but on AWS, you will not get it. So that's going to be much harder. All right, so I hope you find this information useful and that you will try to install the model locally and then interact with it using this nice interface. Also, don't forget that you can always upload your own documents here, like a knowledge base, and then reference this knowledge base in your tool. So here I have my incoming research papers. Then I can just click hash, and then it's going to list the collections, and then I'm going to say what are the most important topics inside, right? I generate this answer from those topics, and then once it kind of analyzes the documents and provides me the answer, remember it's a local model, so it takes longer than what you would normally get from ChatGPT. Then I can start analyzing it with Infranodus and visualize this conversation as a graph to kind of see how I can develop it further. So that would be the workflow that I recommend. I hope you enjoy this. Let me know if you have any questions and comments, and I will release the next video on using these models in more details in the next days. So please subscribe so that you can get informed. Thank you.